Hello and welcome to our Chapter 22 lecture series, and in this video we are going to talk about the immune system and its defenses, starting with our first section. First, we'll do an overview of the diseases caused by infectious agents, what those infectious agents are, and a little bit about the makeup of them. So whenever we use that word infectious agents, it means it can damage or kill the host or host cells. You may have heard the term pathogenic agents, and they're the ones that are going to be causing harm. And they have different virulence levels and what I like to call their toolbox of how they're going to damage our bodies. And there are 5 major categories, including bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoans, and multicellular parasites. So we'll start off describing bacteria. These are single-celled prokaryotes. Remember that prokaryotes is a group of organisms that lack a nucleus. So these are extremely small, about 1 to 2 micrometers as far as the size of the cell, and they're going to have a cell membrane, which we have within our cells, but they have a cell wall, which is different from us. They also can have different shapes. They can be spherical, which we call cocci. They can be rod-like, which we call bacilli, or they can be curled up and coiled, which we call spirilia. And most of the bacteria are harmless. In fact, we have many of them within our body that are going to assist us, and some are virulent. There's that term again, virulent, which means that it is going to cause serious illness. And like I said, they may have virulent factors, which are all the different tools in which the bacteria will have to cause harm to our body. So one of those tools is called a pili. We're going to get more into what they use this for in microbiology. Another tool is called a capsule. We've talked about capsules before. I kind of described it as the cell having this slippery outer edge so that when our phagocytes try to eat up the bacteria, it slips out of its reach, almost like they're trying to hold a bar of wet soap. They can also release different kinds of toxins or damaging enzymes to harm our body. And some examples of virulent bacteria is Clostridium tenati, which causes tetanus, streptococcal bacteria, which causes strep throat. Now let's talk about viruses. Viruses are interesting in that we don't actually think of them as cells. They are much, much smaller, and they're going to contain pieces of either DNA or RNA within them, and they have a protein shell to protect that genetic information. And they're only about 1/100th of a micrometer. Some of them are classified as obligate intracellular parasites, or rather, majority of them are obligate intracellular parasite. Obligate meaning that they absolutely have to enter a cell in order to survive, and they'll kind of hijack the inside machinery of our cells in order to be able to survive and reproduce. So the direct infected cell starts to make copies of their either DNA or RNA and the proteins that create their outer shell, which is known as a capsid. The virus or our immune response may kill the host cell so that it can kind of stop the spread of the of the viral infection. Examples would be viruses that cause the common cold, Ebola, or chicken pox. And you could see here, on this end, this is our healthy cell here that becomes infected by the virus, and then notice that the virus here is going to start to hijack our organelles in order to create the multiple proteins and then assembles them together to create new viruses. They're only showing one here, but this could be a ton of different viruses that start to build up within the cell, and the cell then can exocytose and release the virus so that the virus can go and infect a different healthy cell. Or sometimes viruses kind of accumulate within a cell and the cell will burst, releasing all of those viruses to go and infect different healthy cells. Next, let's talk about fungi. These are eukaryotic cells that have a membrane and a cell wall. They're going to include our molds, yeast, multicellular fungi that produce spores. And they are going to release proteolytic enzymes that induce inflammation within our body. You maybe have seen a fungal infection of the skin. This is going to be a superficial disease, and usually it's caused by a ringworm, called a ringworm, caused by fungi. It does not mean that it is caused by a parasitic worm infection. It's actually fungi, and it can infect our mucosal linings, causing vaginal yeast infections or cause internal infections such as histoplasmosis. Next, we have our protozoans. These are eukaryotic cells as well, but they lack a cell wall. And we can either have them be intracellular parasites or extracellular parasites. And we see them causing diseases like malaria and trichomoniasis. Multicellular parasites, it's the almost last one that we're going to talk about. These are non-microscopic, so even though we discuss them in microbiology, they can be seen with our naked eye, and they take in nourishment from the host that they live within. So most of you have heard of a tapeworm that usually tends to live within our digestive tract and eats up all of the nutrients that we are consuming. Then we have prions. This might be new to you. Some people think of it as like a subset of viruses, but they are fragments of infectious proteins. So they're not cells, they're not viruses, but they cause diseases in our nervous tissue. So you may have heard of our variant Creutzfeldt, it's pronounced Jakob disease, also known as mad cow disease. And this could be spread from the cows to humans by consuming infected meat. Essentially, the prion is within the nervous tissue of the cow first, and then as they grind up that meat, that prion resists any of the cleansing processes and ends up in the infected meat that we consume.